So when should you choose credit repair over bankruptcy or debt consolidation? So we're going to unpack that plus a whole lot more on today's quick episode of the Credit Score Blueprint. So before I dive in, my little disclaimer, what I'm about to go over is not legal advice. So if you are contemplating bankruptcy, seek the advice of a licensed bankruptcy attorney, or if you're contemplating consumer credit counseling or debt consolidation, seek the advice of a financial planner or financial expert to decide whether or not, from a money perspective, does that make sense for you to do or not. All right, so let's talk about bankruptcy for a little bit. So for the consumer, there's really two main types of bankruptcy. There's Chapter 7 and then there's Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is basically what we call the walkaway bankruptcy. So that's where a court will decide that, you don't make enough money, you don't have enough assets, or you don't have enough income or any collateral to satisfy your creditors, right? You owe so much debt and don't have really any income or any assets to satisfy that debt over a reasonable amount of time. And this is where Chapter 7, where the judge may say that you are granted the bankruptcy motion and therefore it would be under the Chapter 7 statute. And that's basically where you're allowed to walk away from your creditor obligations of having to pay back what you owe. The downside is, of course, it does ding your credit for a period of 10 years and it's a public record for life. So that'd be Chapter 7. Chapter 13 bankruptcy is where a judge says, hey, you do have some assets or you do have a good income. You're able to pay back your debt. Maybe not all the interest and all these fees, but you do have the ability to pay back at least your principal balance over a period of 3 to 5 years, maybe 7. Usually it's like 3 to 5 years. And then the judge will have a trustee set up an account to where you'll make payments to the trustee, and then the trustee will then disperse those payments to your creditors on a monthly basis. So that's what Chapter 13 bankruptcy would look like. And the main purpose of bankruptcy to, not only to help get you out of debt, but it's also to help a consumer if the consumer is facing with legal action. Like creditors are threatening lawsuits or threatening to garnish wages or hold back paychecks and things like that. It's really to seek the protection through the court system to, help alleviate some of those pending lawsuits, so that individual doesn't have to suffer from all of that and really put themselves in a big, stressful position. While bankruptcy, I'm not saying it's not stressful, it is, but it does offer that legal protection that some consumers are looking for. So again, bankruptcy is on your credit report for a good amount of time, and it is a public record for life. So public record meaning someone ran a background check, or they were deciding whether or not to rent their home to you for rental property, or maybe you're looking at a job promotion or just getting a job. Those are some things that can be frowned upon, especially in the government workforce. If you're looking at those government positions, they do look at that, and if you're looking for like security clearances and things like that, it could hinder that process. And so you really want to think twice about filing bankruptcy. Again, talk to a bankruptcy attorney, but those are public records for life. From a credit reporting perspective, Chapter 7 again is on your report for 10 years, and Chapter 13 is 7 years from the discharge date. So really think about that before, or even talk to a bankruptcy attorney if you're contemplating doing that. Now, credit repair does not solve that problem. That's where credit repair should not be used. So if you have overwhelming debt, you're over your head, you're drowning in consumer debt and you're trying to get out of it, you don't really want to be calling a credit repair agency, because that's not going to make things better for you. That's not going to solve the problem. Credit repair is not really meant for that reason. Now let's talk about debt consolidation for a little bit, or even, consumer credit counseling services, if you will, kind of how they are alike and how they're different. So when it comes to debt consolidation, that term gets thrown around a lot. And debt consolidation, from a consumer perspective, people associate that with, making one payment and having all the debt consolidated. So there's debt consolidation loans, and there's also consumer credit counseling services. So we're going to kind of break down each of those. So consumer credit counseling services, also known as CCCS, those are typically going to be nonprofit organizations that have existing relationships with credit card companies to help consumers, basically pay back what they owe over a reasonable amount of time. And so when someone is looking at maybe an alternative to bankruptcy, consumer credit counseling services can usually kind of fit that bill. And so there's where that's very, very helpful is if someone is not looking to really ding their credit for, a decade or have a public record that they did bankruptcy, they want to pay back their creditors if they can, but just the high interest rates that they have, it's really not helping them get anywhere. And so consumer credit counseling services, because they have those relationships with credit card companies, they'll bring a new consumer in, a new client, if you will. And, depending on what kind of credit card companies that consumer has, is going to determine what the new fixed interest rate is going to be. And so let's say, for example, there is an individual that has 5 different credit cards: Chase, Discover, American Express, Bank of America, maybe like a Wells Fargo card. And the consumer has like $10,000 worth of credit card debt. And the interest rates are like 20 to 30%, really, really high. So pre-existing relationships may lower that interest rate from like maybe 4% on the low end to about 14%, maybe 15% on the high end. And essentially what will happen is they'll go ahead and close that account out and have that individual pay back their debt. They're going to pay back 100% of what they owe plus a little bit of interest over like a 3 to 7 year period of time. And a lot of times the interest rate will be frozen right then and there, and they're just paying back what they owe. So they're not accruing interest as they go. And another reason why the balance doesn't change is because they close out those accounts. So as an individual, you won't be able to use those credit cards anymore, because through the CCCS program, those credit cards will be closed out. And so that's where it has some downside effect to a credit score, is because that utilization will be gone. That payment history still will be built as you're making payments, but at some point, sometime it's going to stop because those accounts have been closed. So it does have that effect to a credit score. But of course, if you're already way maxed out on these accounts and you're missing payments here and there, the credit score may be kind of low already. This essentially kind of helps stop the bleeding. And the other last downfall when it comes to consumer credit counseling services is that account that you have, let's say that Chase card, for example, it'll have a comment below it, or on the trade line, it'll say account paid by third party. Doesn't affect the credit score, but it is one of those eyesores if you ever have your credit really looked at. If you're trying to get like a big loan down the road or a big line of credit, that may be something that get brought up and is questioned, and could be a reason why you get declined something, but not always. But it doesn't really tie into a credit score, but it is going to be a remark on the credit report. So that's consumer credit counseling services, a great alternative to bankruptcy, keeps you out of the bankruptcy courts. But again, it's having to deal with overwhelming credit card debt or any overwhelming unsecured debt, like loans and things like that. But it does not help mortgages. It does not help auto loans. They usually don't work with those types of debt. They usually work with unsecured types of debt only. And that's where credit repair does not apply. Credit repair should not be used in a situation where, again, you have overwhelming consumer debt and don't really know how to get out of it. Credit repair does not solve that problem. And lastly, let's talk about a debt consolidation loan. So a debt consolidation loan could be a great alternative to consumer credit counseling services, because you're not going through a third-party agency. If your credit score is strong enough, a bank can approve you for a separate loan to help you pay off your credit card debt. And so this does not result in like a third-party intervention. This does not result in your accounts being closed. The bank's going to give you the loan. Let's say you owe 10 grand in credit card debt. The bank will give you like a $10,000 loan. You use that loan to pay off your credit cards, and then you just make one payment to the bank to pay back, basically your debt. And this can be a little tricky, because if you result to using your credit cards again, you're going to make the problem a little bit bigger than it really has to be, because now you have a $10,000 loan you're paying back to consolidate your owed debt. And then you start using the credit cards again. Then you go from $10,000 worth of debt to maybe $20,000 worth of debt, and you're making the problem bigger than it really needs to be. So you got to be very careful when it comes to taking out a debt consolidation loan. So again, it is credit score, basically determine if someone can qualify for a debt consolidation loan. It does help lower the balances on the credit cards. It doesn't close those accounts out. It can be a great alternative to consumer credit counseling services if the credit is good enough to qualify for one of these types of loans, but you have to be very careful when it comes to not making your debt higher than it really needs to be. Great alternative to CCCS, but again, credit repair does not apply here either. This is not where credit repair is going to solve this problem, because you're still dealing with an overwhelming debt load. So when is credit repair a good idea? Where should you use it? How does it apply? How does it work? So credit repair is great for individuals who may have gone through some financial hard times in the past, maybe due from a bankruptcy many years back, maybe from a job loss, a divorce, medical issues happened in the past, and this person is now getting back on their feet, but they have quite a bit of old debt or old accounts that are on the report that may be misreporting. Maybe they're not fully accurate. Maybe they're questionable. And so that's where credit repair can come in handy, because it's going to take a very thorough look at the credit report. An expert would actually look at the report and kind of come up with a game plan on how to get back on track. They'll also guide you on how to build new credit, so you can start taking on new credit accounts and start demonstrating you can handle credit from there on out. But really looking at some of the old accounts that may be misreporting. Maybe the account numbers are not correct. Maybe the balances are questionable. Maybe the dates or the payment history doesn't add up, doesn't match. Something's off about it. And that's where a real credit repair company can be very helpful when it comes to that kind of regard. So credit repair does not pay off your debt, does not get you out of debt. It just really helps you deal with the facts that are in front of you, or so-called facts that are in front of you, of these allegations that are filed against you when it comes to these debt collectors and these creditors. Because don't think that they're perfect. They make mistakes. The banks make mistakes. Debt collectors make mistakes. And it's on your credit report. There's not a watchdog that's going around and kind of look at to see if this information is accurate. That's really on you, the individual, the consumer, to ensure that your report is 100% accurate. That's where credit repair can really come in handy and play a big part, because it can really help someone get back on track, get their scores back in a good position, so they can go and do the next things in life that they weren't able to do before, like buy a house, like get a car with a very decent interest rate, so you're not upside down so fast. Maybe to help the business owner, get approved for a big business loan in the future to expand their company, or maybe to just stay in business a lot longer. That's where credit repair can really play a big part and really help those individuals that are going through that situation. So if you're in the market to work on your credit, get back on track, and so you can go do those things like I talked about, buy a house, get a low interest rate on a car, or really expand your business with getting access to credit and loans, then I did put together a complete do-it-yourself course called the Credit Score Blueprint. It's loaded with a lot of good content, educational videos. I explain how credit works, how the system is designed to really beat you, but how you can stand up against it. I talk about Metro 2 compliance, which is basically a 200+ page document put together by the CDIA with the bureaus to, basically so they can conform to industry standards. So I compress all of that into very simple formatting, very simple videos, so you don't have to do countless hours of research. I know you don't have time for that, or money to do all of that. I've done all that for you, put together countless different dispute letter templates that are going to help you dispute from a factual basis using the Bureau's Metro 2 standard against them, just really holding them accountable and putting them on notice. Plus lots of other helpful training in my course. Check out the link in the email that you may have received or anywhere on this page to learn more about my Credit Score Blueprint course, so you can begin working on your credit yourself. Probably save a lot of money. Instead of hiring a company to do it, you can do it yourself, and save you a lot of time, because all that research and all that information you have to go and get is basically all here in the course, simplified and compressed down for you. So click on the link to learn more, and I hope to see you guys on the inside. Take care.